Welcome to the Embodiment podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh.
So back on the show today, Dylan Newcomb. So Dylan is really a masterful embodiment practitioner, founder of a system called Uzazu, and it's his second time on the show. I host him in the UK. He's someone I very much like to learn from personally. It's why I invite him and get on well with. And we were sort of mid-flow on our last podcast and felt like there was more to be said. So I've invited him back as much as anything because I like chatting with Dylan. So Dylan, welcome back.
Thanks, Mark. Nice to be here.
People may well have heard the first episode, but if they missed it, can you give a sort of brief sense of what is Uzazu and where are you coming from with this?
Yeah, sure. I call it, lately I call it Uzazu Embodied Intelligence, and it's really focused on very practical ways to shift one's state, both on your own, individually, privately, to shift your state, be it to calm down or to find energy and focus and confidence, and also very much shifting state within an interpersonal context. So Uzazu is very interpersonally grounded, dealing with what happens when you meet the other, when you meet a boss or your lover or a coworker, right? What happens? Where do you get dysregulated? What's easy for you? What's difficult? And how Uzazu gives people a way of first understanding more precisely how their body is responding, and body-mind is responding in different situations, and then what's the most elegant, effective way that they can shift that state into the desired state they want to be in.
Mm-hmm. So it's a map for understanding kind of different states, and then I guess traits if they're more permanent. We talk about state and trait.
Yeah, right.
I remember, and then actually shifting so powerfully between them. So what might that look like kind of practically? So there's so many different ways of doing embodiment. What's the technique that someone might see or do?
Sure. Yeah. Just to further clarify the framing here, indeed, it's a model. On one hand, it's a model of understanding the body-mind, and it's a way to map, as you were saying, these states. And then it's a method to shift these states. So in terms of the method, it works with body posture, or shifting your body, changing your body shape intentionally into specific postures, which have directions in space. So we might be going, I'm pulling away from this person. Let me just notice that and pull away from this person and just be conscious of that. Or, I tend to be I feel very anxious. I'm up high. Let's see what happens if I sink my body down. And, that feels a little edgy to sink down and relax. But then how can I work with that with my awareness? So in other words, depending on your reactivity and your desired state, how can you leverage, in a way, the effects of moving the body in specific directions into specific postures to first cultivate awareness of how easy, accessible, or non-accessible or reactive it is for you to be in certain states or modes, and then how to process them.
For any embodied training, it's like just noticing how familiar is this, how comfortable is this home ground for me? Because there's this idea that we can't really feel ourselves. We can only kind of feel what comes easily and what doesn't.
Yes. And I will add, it's so context dependent, isn't it? I might be really easy. If I just said to somebody that I started working with, how good are you at relaxing? They might say, I'm really good at relaxing. Is it equally easy for you to relax when you're around somebody that is in an authority position? Oh no, then I get really triggered.
Yeah.
So really sensing what states are available to me in which contexts.
Right. So states in different contexts. So I do hear, we have this embodied layers model that we use on EFC, and I do hear people sort of push back against the idea of embodiment because they'll always say, well, it depends. That's the kind of, and they're not wrong, right? Like there is a way in which we are contextual, relational. The environment we're in is making a difference. I'm in Berlin, which is quite a relaxed city today. And it does make, it's quite different from Moscow or New York. Even as a big city, let alone something like the desert or the mountains. But, how do you deal with that when people are like, well, this is just how I am today?
How do I deal with? I don't really. Somehow, I think because I tend in the last 7-8 years, I tend to work more one-on-one with people, and in intensive trainings, I don't. I think you encounter embodiment or engage with people embodiment in a wider variety of contexts than I do presently. So I don't encounter that much, to be honest. But what does come up for me very much is the importance of having a very skillful and conscientious interplay between general and specific, right? So I just a moment ago I said, somebody could be able to relax in general, but not able to relax around an authority figure, for example, or around a potential lover, whatever it may be. But at the same time, some people it becomes very clear as you start feeling into exploring the range of embodied states and possibilities that they, across the board, just generally baseline, have difficulty relaxing. Yes. Or they're generally depressed and it's really triggering for them generally to be in higher arousal states. That feels unsafe. Right. Or maybe it is context specific, but their ability to relax is only yay deep. Right. And as the facilitator, I have a sense of there's a lot more range. They're not complaining about it. They're not even aware of what they're lacking, but I sense, there's a lot more range that would benefit this person to access. So I generally, rule of thumb, will pull them out of any specific context and just create a safe, neutral space, as it were, and just exercise the range of states so the body-mind can reclaim sort of the core syllabus of states and make them safe, and then start to reintegrate them into the various contexts.
And I guess this is it's kind of a pushback a little bit, but it's also just the thinking out loud that it isn't sort of a clean place to do embodiment. In that there's always like for example, me and you generally work with the model of we're teaching a class or we're facilitating a group, right? Something like that. So what I realized, like teaching yoga groups, is I'm always working with their relationship to authority because I'm a perceived authority figure.
Right.
That is the context, whether I like it or not. There's no clean place because they've come and there's a certain relationship there.
Yeah, and you're a high energy white male on top of it, which some people have a history of, there's always a history.
I'm only ever seeing them through the lens of them relating to, let's just take one of those things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
There's some guy, they're going to, they've got a whole history with guys that may be positive, negative, in many cases complex.
Right.
And I'm only ever seeing them as a teacher. And it is quite interesting. Sometimes I'll get a glimpse, on EFC, we have quite a big campus, and there'll be maybe, Vilya, one of my Russian colleagues, will be doing some work with a woman off to the side, standing by the river, kind of far away. And I'll sort of walk by and go, I've never quite seen that student like that before. Because it's her relating to, Russian woman who's 20 years older than me or whatever. So it's
yes.
It's interesting that we as teachers, I'm kind of thinking out loud here.
Sure.
There isn't a clean place to sort of see anyone's embodiment from.
Yes, it's always embedded, as they say in embodied cognitive neuroscience. At the same time, what comes up for me is, again, I do the majority of my work in a one-on-one context lately. I only started last year when you said, come on, come teach, that I came back out of my bubble, which for those in your listenership that don't know me, it's pretty much just because I had a child and I wanted to not tour and teach for a while while she was young. And I'm just, now that she's 8, our daughter, I'm just starting to go back out more into the world and teach. So I really, that really showed me the power of the one-on-one vehicle for creating that safety. I have much more control and power, if you will, to create a safe bubble with somebody. Right, rather than if I have somebody in a room full of people with God knows how many different dynamics going on.
Right. I mean, this word safe is kind of used a lot now. And I know you're influenced by Stephen Porges. I mean, how do you create what you're calling a safe bubble? Does that just mean a place where someone doesn't feel triggered, where they're basically their fight system's not firing, they're kind of relaxing more into their social engagement system? Is this kind of how you're seeing it?
Yeah. And it's I'll keep speaking right now just to the one-on-one dyad. Yeah. I find that different strokes for different folks, right? It's about attuning. I find what works best find that safety for them is that I attune myself to the kind of state. I'm kind of moving around. People can't see me right now, but I'm moving around, moving around to try to find that place, a way of being in myself that I feel them relax into. And for some people, that's me showing up more positive and high energy and a little bit. Yeah. If I get into this uber touchy feely soft place, that makes some people nervous.
Yeah, that can be pretty uncomfortable. When I went to a body work not long ago, and they were just super gooey from moment one, and it was socially a bit weird. And it actually,
where is this going? Yeah,
if they'd just been a bit more normal, and then maybe 10-20 minutes of the body work, that kind of softness would have been perfect. But it just felt like socially uncalibrated. But
then with somebody else, it's the opposite, right? I tend to be quite high energy. The one-on-one coaching has taught me over the years, or I'm still trying to learn the lesson that, oh, wait a minute, it'll help this person if I don't get so excited right now. I'm thrilled to work with them. But if somebody's had a lot of trauma, I can't be like, oh, I'm just thrilled to work with you. Like, they want to entrain. Unconsciously, they're longing to entrain with my calmer states.
Yeah. And I like what you're doing, that sort of moving around, and there's a way in which you're being your own, what would be the word, like barometer. So it's like, does this make them relax, or does this make them relax, right?
It's like tuning a radio. I always have that image of it's like tuning in a channel until it's clear.
Yeah.
And it can take a session or two. I find the whole first session with a client it's really about sort of finding that groove together of like, oh yeah, this is how I want to be in my body with this person by and large.
And then with a group, you've got all these other nervous systems, right? So
that's really hard in a group. Yeah. Because there's no one thing you're attuning to, but we do, don't we? As facilitators, we get that feedback loop going, and eventually the group kind of finds its groove. If it
the group mood, right?
Ideally, yeah. And then when it clicks in, it's awesome, isn't it? It's all right, we're rocking it together.
And it feels to me like it's a large part of the beginning of any workshop is all these different kind of, limbic systems, all these different embodiments coming together, rubbing up against each other, people sort of checking each other out. I see a lot of people asserting roles, like they'll say something in the group which looks like a question but isn't a question. It's a way of saying, I know about this topic. I'm going to be the funny one today, guys. I just want to point that character. I'm the joker today, There's asserting of where they are and who they are in the system and their role. And I find sometimes that can feel just like an awful waste of time in a group. Maybe it's just human nature, but it's certainly, it doesn't, that process isn't so necessary in a one-to-one interaction, right?
And then, totally. And then there's another big one is, and very understandably, is people that are concerned that their needs aren't going to get met in that workshop, in that setting. Their need for safety, their need for making sure that the teacher is academically grounded enough, and that he's not
teaching
bullshit. Yeah, testing.
Yeah, little tests. Like I'm going to ask a hard question to see if you can handle it emotionally, or intellectually, or whatever it is. Like this little test. Are you going to mean if I disobey a rule, or can I just get up and walk across the room and do what I want? Is there freedom for that, or is there a boundary around that?
And
that boundary testing as well, right?
Yeah, and in my earlier days of teaching, that would trigger me more. I would be like, oh, how do I deal with this person? Now, I mean, not to say it's always super easy, but now I find I have much more compassion for that. Like, I can have compassion for that need. It's maybe not convenient for me how they're trying to get it met, but like, okay, yeah, I'll do my best to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, perhaps back to the methods. You were asking about. Before we do that, I wanted to just say. So I think the big takeaway, the main point here, from my perspective, in terms of creating safety in that, is that it's easy as a coach or therapist or facilitator to lock onto a certain identity or value set of what a good facilitator or a good coach, or how my ideal facilitator self, what that state should be like. And I'm going to interact with the other or the others from that optimal place.
Right.
Instead of holding that as a more dynamic field of like, if you want to be proud of anything, be proud of your capacity to attune.
Right. So let's name some of the more common ones, because I think there's not that many. So one common one I see is the sort of head tilty, super soft kind of therapy counselor kind of one.
Uber compassionate. Yeah.
And then the other one is I see as a sort of American motivational speaker, kind of like super yang, like, pumping state the whole time, mate.
Tony Robbins. Yeah,
that kind of vibe. And they're two that I see a lot as sort of stuck states in facilitators.
Yeah, those are kind of like the yin and yang.
Yeah, yin and yang kind of spectrum, isn't it? Like you've got to be either the bad. I sometimes wonder if I get stuck in a sort of joker entertainer mode sometimes. To be honest, with bigger groups, there's a certain conditioning to that, right? There's a certain like, oh, I did the joke and everyone laughed. Have I actually served that group? I've got a nice little social stroke from
confirmation. Yeah.
But it's like, is that actually of service? That's another one, maybe.
Yeah. Adam Kahane wrote this wonderful book called Power and Love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just talking about that, that's such a useful, straightforward polarity. And I think it's relevant to the two that you intuitively spoke to here. Is my value love? I want to come from love. I want to cultivate love, or I want to stand in my power and I want you to stand in your power.
Yeah.
And they're both great. They're both great.
Yes. Safety and
what serves most in the moment. Yeah.
I've heard that phrase as safety and excitement as well. So it's in kind of the theory of flirting. Someone needs to feel safe enough to flirt, but if it's just all safe and no excitement, it's dull, right?
Yeah.
But if it's all excitement and no safety, that's just scary. So in the sort of the embodied theory of flirting, these two kind of variables are kind of played with and kept in balance. Okay, so I feel like we did some of the theory last time. We're, having an amiable ramble here, which is pleasant. But I want to get practical here. So let's maybe go with some case studies. So someone you've worked with, obviously you need to, make it, change the name, make it anonymous or whatever. But I'd love to hear like a couple of different sort of case studies of someone who came in with problem X and then you worked with them, with Uzazu Y.
Sure. Let me reflect for a moment. Yeah. Okay. So let's call her Sarah. Mother of two, divorced, starting to date after a few years, quite a abusive father of the children. Sort of had her under his thumb for a number of years, and she managed to escape. He seemed highly dysfunctional from her accounts, and left her with a lot of trauma, which was compounded trauma from also starting in her childhood. And her kids were now early teens, her two boys, and she was finding herself just overwhelmed, tired, mildly depressed, in and out of depression, unmotivated to do stuff in her own life and to attend to her own health. It's so easy in parenthood, especially motherhood, to just end up caught in a cycle of attending to your children, right? And others' needs. So not attending to her own needs, which was manifesting in not feeding herself, skipping her own meals while she cooked for the children, or not taking care of her house and her environment in a way that would bolster her well-being. And this is, I choose this one because it's a pretty common pattern. This isn't a super unusual scenario, is it? And in this kind of scenario, the first thing that I work on with people is reclaiming the body-mind's capacity to feel the full extent of the now, of the present moment. To sink in, because it's the most general thing we can say about when somebody cycles into depression and low energy states is that the sensory motor loop has been compromised, right? Their capacity to feel where they're at, to integrate that, and to organically generate a motivating, inspiring response of, yeah, that's what I'm going to do about this, has been compromised, right? So when that starts to fall apart, either we overcompensate and our autonomic nervous system ramps up, right, and we just push, and or we collapse, right, into a parasympathetic sort of shutdown. And she was more in that, with slight outbursts, as is often the case. And so working with her on helping her, giving her postures and vowel sounds and visualizations that created a safe space in not external safe space, but a safe space within her body-mind system to sink down into those sensations. So I use shape, vowel sounds, and visualizations or imagery to support awareness to sink into those felt sense layers and live there again. And then it's like, if you water a seed, then it starts to grow. You don't have to like escort the seed through all the stages of shooting and branching and whatever. Like if you can get somebody into feeling safe and sensing again, like so many things just start to go better automatically, don't they? It's like the whole organicism of the system like reawakens and starts doing what it needs to. I mean, it's not like end of story, no more work needs to be done, but it's so potent just to achieve that. And that can take time. That's a layered process. So that was about a month of meeting once a week, or 2 months in her case of meeting once a week. And then you start to encounter, as you do that, then you start to encounter layers of trauma. And I think we took 4 or 5 specific key incidents and just very systematically cleared those out and restored safety within, so she could remember those incidences and still feel safe and still be present in her body. And then when you do that, first I like to just have the capacity, build a capacity of somebody to feel safe sensing their body more deeply. And that's great. And that already starts to benefit their life. But if somebody still has significant traumas that have compromised that, and those trauma does that fundamentally, then they will still, in my experience, even though they have the skill of sensing their body more deeply, in those contexts, we were talking about like how contextual it is, in those contexts, unconsciously, they will still be getting triggered. And so they won't be able to use that skill that they've just spent so much time and money acquiring. So without addressing that trauma, it doesn't matter how much skill you have, you're not going to freaking use it if you're unconsciously still getting triggered. So removing those triggers and then identifying unconscious limiting beliefs that are kind of like, that's another thing that I've found is just so key to teasing out and resetting. You can do a lot of somatic work and have that capacity. But if limiting beliefs aren't reset, again, you won't utilize, when push comes to shove, when the rubber meets the road, you won't utilize your new somatic skills when those beliefs are triggered in context. They're like little mini therefores of trauma. Therefore, it's not safe in this situation. Therefore, I'm not allowed to do this. So resetting those, identifying the key beliefs that were holding that lack of safety of sensing and joy of responding, eliminating those. And then all of a sudden, just so much in her life starts going better. Her energy starts coming back. She finds she's naturally eating better and talking to her kids better and engaging in a relationship better. But then it's like the next wave of work starts, which is like, okay, we've restored the sensory half of the sensory motor loop. But then when you start going into okay, now I feel ready to take action. But when you start going into action and using the motor impulse, then the next wave of triggers starts to hit. Right. The next wave of, it's not safe for me to step into my power. Now I remember when my father hit me when I spoke up when I was little. Oh, I've been told no as a woman so many times that I can't do this and I can't do that. Right. All those layers that are not so much around the inward yin sensing side, but the outward empowering self-agency and collaboration and interaction, the active aspects of it. So then moving into that, and spent about 2-3 months just systematically, okay, where are you noticing it in your life? What's happening? Okay, let's extrapolate that down into an exercise that you can practice, and always linking it to the sensing that we've restored. So healthy, I always say healthy yang comes from healthy yin, right? Healthy motor response needs to come from healthy sensory integration. Right. So, okay, go back to your sponge posture, but it's one of our key postures in Uzazu. Go back to your sponge posture, feel that, notice that, feel the energy impulse of that, move that into action. Great. You got that going. You feel clear and strong in that action. Okay. Now imagine that you're in the kitchen and he's there and you're saying this thing. How does it feel then? Oh, I'm starting to get triggered again. Okay. Stay there, relax, breathe, just systematically restoring safety. Mm-hmm. To not only feeling, but acting. And then she started showing up for her family, showing up for her children, doing more in her community, moving her business forward, all that good stuff that I didn't have to like hold her hand like a sort of action coach accountability coach of like, okay, let's make a list and we're going to muscle through it and you're going to do it. I know you don't want to, but just do it anyway. Like when you treat things at this fundamental level, then they just start doing that shit.
Yeah.
Much more so, right? Because it feels good again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice. And I'm getting it's quite a bit of work to really do this stuff, right? To work with a coach consistently over time. I mean, it's certainly an investment for people if they want to work at this level.
It is. Yes, it is. It's an investment of time and money to go to work that deeply with somebody. And yet, she'd been caught in these patterns for several decades, and 4 or 5 months later, she's not.
Yeah.
So like, how much time is it? I in the grand scheme of things, to fundamentally repattern yourself, I meditated 2 to 3 hours a day for 12 years.
Right.
And it gave me a lot. It gave me patience. It gave me more mindfulness. But my core attachment wounds and patterns were not shifted. My capacity to speak in larger crowds without getting triggered didn't shift all that much. I was more aware of how triggered I was, and that was helpful. But you know what I mean? Like, you can spend a lot of time doing your Tai Chi and your yoga and your this and your that. If you're not have these really core limiting patterns shift. It's when we work at that deep sensory motor integration level that is both done in sort of safe isolation, as we were referring to earlier, and then escorted very, 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 very gradually and very directly into the context in one's life, that the whole thing sort of clicks in and starts running smoothly, in my experience.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I'm enjoying this kind of practical, case studies. We don't often talk case studies on the podcast, actually. So can you hit us with another one? Something a bit different from Sarah, but just another case?
Yeah. Let me talk about another woman. It's another woman. Well, that's okay. Who is a Feldenkrais practitioner, who discovered Feldenkrais in her, I think, mid-20s, fell in love with it, gave her so much, transformed her inner experience. I think lifted her, I lifted her out a certain amount of depression. And so she became a Feldenkrais practitioner, as people do. And because, if it helped you, then you want to give it to others. And but that then brings somebody into entrepreneurship, doesn't it? Brings somebody into needing to get clients, talk to prospective clients, manage all sorts of phases of client interactions. And that was very confronting for her. That was very challenging.
I just want to jump in and underline that. This is the story of so many embodiment people I know, that they fix a problem that they have. They want to share that with others. It's a very good-natured, natural thing. And then they find themselves now in the space of being a business person, which was never the thing that they were called to.
No, nor was it really part of their training.
Nearly always not, right? We do a little bit of marketing training on all our courses, and students often say, wow, this is exceptional. Even the fact that you do a little bit of this, it's just not part of, and you look at the number of people who do Feldenkrais training that don't actually go on to have it as their career. I think something like 10% in one training I saw, and that did make it their career. And I go, well, how much of that was just due to people not having the business skills? Shouldn't that be a sort of fundamental part of it? And then there's the sort of inner side of that as well, right? Which sounds like what you're coming to.
Yeah. And there's also something that I've noticed as a trend where when one does a more interior, somatic practice, be it massage therapy or Feldenkrais or even body mind centering to a degree, so much peace and calmness and integration and is achieved within the context of doing that work. That it feels great. It feels like, I've achieved so much. But then you move into the marketing space, right? And the entrepreneur space and the making a living at it space, and a whole nother layer of interpersonal challenges, limiting beliefs, just lack of skills, insecurity, vulnerability gets triggered. That can feel like, wait a minute, it feels like I'm an affront on the peace that one has achieved through the method. So I can feel like, oh, this is antithetical to what I really wanted to be doing, instead of, oh no, this is the next appropriate challenge and opportunity for my growth.
Yeah, there's something almost sort of, it's distasteful somehow. And there's also, I think, a real conditioning which leads people not to spend time on the skill they need to develop. Because let's stay with the Feldenkrais example. You could easily go back to another Feldenkrais training that will feel really good.
Yeah, just to stay in that space. Yeah.
And actually in this, it doesn't, so it's like there's a conditioning not to go back to that stuff.
Yeah. So I don't remember how she found out about me, but she did a combination of just the Uzazu online course and then working with me one-on-one. And quite quickly, because Uzazu, as I mentioned earlier, is very interpersonal. We're working individually, and we're working with another and with postures and visualizations and practices that are explicitly keying into assessing and reconditioning key states or dynamics within the interpersonal situation. And it zeroed in very quickly on where she was feeling unsafe and where she just, it's like, that statement, neurons that fire together, wire together. It's like we build a familiarity. If we're lucky, we build a certain familiarity and safety around a certain loop. And that's our feel-good mode, right? And then so we strengthen that. But then these states that feel unsafe, it becomes this kind of, I don't want to say vicious circle, but it just gets weaker the less we use it.
It's going to atrophy, right?
Yeah. So some of the work I find with people is obviously about cleansing, processing traumas, removing beliefs. But the other part is just about having clear, efficient, and powerful ways to practice being in certain states or connecting with people in a more sensory way, a sort of listening and empathy, and just relaxing into the togetherness. And then can I, from there, take that into being active with you, being proactive with you, feeding my motor response into a connected space. And can I do that in a way that feels good and safe good and safe, basically. Those are two key things, by the way. I think helpful to note. I've found over the years that safety and goodness are like the two big ones.
Say a bit more about goodness, what that is.
Yeah, our moral self is huge. Our moral self is huge, and it's not talked about enough in embodiment, from what I can tell. So the first layer is goodness, safety, right? If the person is unconsciously and often consciously feeling unsafe, that's the first thing to work on. I need to feel safe. But then you get to the goodness thing. Like, let's take this example of me being assertive in giving something to you. So I'm maybe you're a potential client of mine, because this is relevant to her situation. And so I want to say, hey, here's what I could do for you. Right. That's very different than just tuning in and saying, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Right. I might feel like a very good person saying, hey, how are you?
Right.
But I might all of a sudden feel like a schmuck or a jerk or an asshole saying, here's what I can do for you.
Great. So it might be like, hey, I feel safe to say no. I've got past that. I'm not super triggered. I just feel like it's not something good people do. Nice people don't say no.
Yeah. So that's a whole body-mind integration process of, am I a good person? Do I feel like a good person? And that's right now I'm forced in this podcast to say it in a very languagey way, but there's also just the felt sense of goodness. This is right as I'm in that mode of being assertive and giving to you in a empowered way, that there's a feeling of goodness that is safe to flow through that. And that builds on the sense of safety, but it's its own thing too. Uh-huh. And it has everything to do with, this is such social conditioning, past traumas that inform this, right? A time when your dad said, no, good girls don't do this, or your culture says this or that. And sort of reclaiming and reconnecting to, oh yeah, goodness can look and feel this way too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's different for different people, of course, where those challenges lie.
Anything more on this case study that we?
Yeah. So as we repatterned, identified these does she have access to these key states interpersonally, and we repatterned them. It's just, she finished her website finally. It just, I didn't have to, project manage her through her website. She just got it done. And she started putting herself out there more, and she found herself more comfortable with clients. But not only that, she found herself more comfortable with her husband and more empowered with her husband, more vulnerable with her husband. So her relationships were changing. And then she was noticing how she was just able to facilitate Feldenkrais that much better because she had worked on the interpersonal aspect of it. And it was only then that, in going through that, that retrospectively, she realized how little she had repatterned her interpersonal dynamics in her Feldenkrais journey.
Right. Mm.
That just wasn't even so much on her radar.
Yeah, it's not their main emphasis, as it were. And it does seem that like every body practice has a particular focus of attention, which can lead to serious atrophy elsewhere.
Yeah. I don't know. We can circle back on it if you wanted to bring up something else. But one thing that that is also, just in terms of the context specificness of the mind-body system, is a phenomenon that I've come across a lot in different ways through my life, is how people can be very somatically attuned, very integrated. I come from, as you know, a dance background, a professional ballet and modern background. So I spent like 20 years of my professional life in a dance studio, more or less. So I've been around people that are very somatically integrated, but that doesn't translate, as you know, into being able to be somatically integrated in every aspect of their life.
Right.
It's so I've seen so many times, Mark, people looking at dancers on the stage dancing this lovely duet and going, "Oh my God, I wish I were a dancer," and sort of romanticizing that we dance our way beautifully through all our relationships or something because we can dance a lovely duet. But those same dancers, right? You get them in their private life, and a lot of them are complete messes because It doesn't carry over. It's similar. I mean, I get to this because somebody can practice Feldenkrais or yoga or meditation and achieve individually quite advanced states that don't necessarily carry over into the interpersonal. That's really a whole piece that needs to be addressed and worked on.
Yeah, that's important. I've seen this with people who meditate a lot, do yoga a lot. They've got the personal tuning in, but it might A, just be personal, not interpersonal, B, to be on a very physical level, not necessarily incorporating the emotional aspect too. Yeah,
that's the other key part of it. And so when people say, "Oh, I need to get into my body more," great, by all means do it. If you need to be more physical, if you're not exercising your body enough, sensing your body enough, great. And don't think that that's ultimately enough to feel great in your relationships.
So what's your advice for someone that has a strong sort of body background, like a yoga or meditation background, where their sensory awareness is pretty good, but maybe they haven't taken it into the emotional, interpersonal domains?
It depends, of course, on the person and what path would be most efficacious for them. Some first thoughts are, if it's somebody that hasn't been in a somatically grounded, playful space with somebody else, going to something like an ecstatic dance that is where people are interacting with each other, or contact improvisation, just to start to get familiar of being with other bodies in a non-structured, listening, interacting, playful way. If it feels at all edgy, if you have resistance to doing it, do it. Like, squirm for a little while and just be curious about, what is this resistance? And if it just presents itself to you, it's I'm not interested in that. Listen to that for a moment. Stay with that. Because I totally get different strokes for different folks, but very often I find people are just triggered to be in a non-structured space where they can play with other bodies. Yeah,
that's surprisingly difficult for a lot of people, and it's almost hard for me to understand why now, because that's my idea of a good time. But there's a sort of almost like a shrinking back into the sort of safe predictability of oneself, which as social animals always ends up being a bad idea, right?
Right. And I want to say also, though, that respect your process, of course, respect your boundaries, titrate it. You can stay off onto the side and, your whole first session, just sort of be off on the side and breathe and, acclimatize yourself. And then maybe the next time you go a little bit further in, or you just dabble a little bit with somebody, like titrate it. That's really important. Don't just like throw yourself into
I think so many environments where people could do these things are very difficult to titrate, in that often teaching isn't set up that way. It's like, right, find a partner, eye gaze for 10 minutes, dance, in this really intimate way until I say stop. So it's very difficult for people to titrate and opt out in those environments, right? To actually, they're sort of designed for people who are very comfortable with that. And there isn't that gentle in that people may need. So it's quite a barrier, I think.
If it's a fully facilitated workshop where somebody's just throwing you into the depths, absolutely. And like I go every Sunday to in Portland, Maine, here I go to this wonderful ecstatic dance inspired dance community. And you can totally choose, and people do. It's beautiful to see. Some people are just totally on the side doing their own thing, whatever that is. And other people are just like eating up the dance floor together and all over each other in a decent way. And then everything in between. So I think what I like about the ecstatic dance environment is that you do it, relatively speaking, you have freedom. Every once in a while, some man will come and put himself in your face, and then you just have to practice boundaries and, saying no and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So there's that, but that was sort of the first step, but that doesn't necessarily, you can go very far with that without getting truly emotionally vulnerable. Right. And really exercising being present with an other in an emotionally integrated and emotionally vulnerable space. And for that, I know that I work on that with people with Uzazu, so I'm very much in that context. Uzazu exercises are a great vehicle to do that. And then I can give people homework exercise they can do with a partner. In absence of that, there's a increasing array of great tantra practices that people can explore that can touch on that very much. Simply sitting opposite your partner, a practice that my wife and I do that is so helpful and anybody can do, is when you notice that you are starting to get into a tiff with your partner and there's a risk of saying stuff that ain't skillful to each other, that ain't productive. What if you were to agree to just take a pause, sit down together, close your eyes for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes and just breathe, right? Restore your own inner, open your eyes, feeling your body, and then just open your eyes and eye gaze with the other person while still present in your own body. So I can see you while I'm feeling me and staying relaxed. Just that already is a total reset. But then if you, from that, once you've acclimatized to I can feel my body and I can see you, just start to let your spine wave a little bit. Just let yourself move forward, back, side to side, that you're not locking your neck or locking your spine. And then that jump starts the flow of your sensory motor processing with having the other person fully being a part of your awareness loop. And that creates a co-availability for that which is wanting to happen together. That was probably not there that much anymore as you were starting to get into that argument. And then, okay, who wants to talk first? But having that somatically grounded and connected baseline, restoring that. Oh, that has saved my wife and I from so much suffering, shall we say? Just committing to doing that.
Mm. Yeah, one of the even simpler ways I ask students is what I call the Starbucks practice, where I say when you're buying a coffee in the morning, or it could be a stick of gum, whatever, notice yourself, notice the person behind the counter, have a sense of how you feel, have a look at them, have a sense of how they might be feeling. And continue with the normal interaction without any eye gazing or, And it's really interesting. The students report back that they have these touching interactions. They get given free coffee. the person behind the counter says, I don't know, but I don't know why I want to say this, but I really like you, like there's all these sort of, and then literally all they're doing is tuning into themselves and noticing the other person. So very basic relational mind, emotional level, and all these sort of big responses are happening. Several times I've been given the coffee for free by the person, and I wasn't trying to get a free coffee, but they somehow felt like noticed or seen in a way that they often aren't, I guess, in their jobs. So
I often distill that kind of that key dynamic that we're both referring to as into the mantra for my students of relaxing into myself, I relax with you. Relaxing into myself, I relax with you. And then present in myself, I am present with you. Very nice.
Very nice. Do you have any kind of other I'm thinking particularly for facilitators out there, we do courses at Brighton for facilitators, and a lot of facilitators of various kinds listen to this. It's one of the things we probably have most in common, actually, the listeners, is all kind of embodiment people. A large number of us teach something. But any other sort of quick win tips before we wrap up for today?
Quick win tips. Well, first, to reiterate that point we were discussing in the beginning, right, of being continually remembering to be available to be in that dynamic dance of attunement with the other. Like, it's easy as a facilitator to, even if we don't hold that as a explicit worldview, to shift into that fix the problem mindset, where I'm outside of it looking at the problem, at the person with the problem and trying to fix it, and forgetting that, oh, no, this is a co-creative dance as well. And the more that I can get the work done from that place, I find that I'm energized at the end of a session rather than drained. Mm-hmm. When I'm factoring myself out of the equation, or not allowing myself to be a fluid, embodied part of the equation, there's a cost on us as facilitators at the end of the day, isn't there? So that's a big one. Another.
What about when sometimes I get a sense almost like certain participants will sort of be needy or clingy or sticky, and
as a facilitator, or
as a facilitator, I sometimes feel like there may be one or a number of students who have a sort of clingy, sticky neediness that is like, it's normally like holding a boundary, being like, okay, no, I'm having my lunch now, I need time to myself, or it's very literal boundaries. But there can almost be a sort of felt energetic sense of that at the end of the day. And groups are quite different, I find, for this. There's groups I walk away at the end of the day going, I feel fine. And other groups I'm kind of like, yucky, icky, sticky kind of thing going on at the end of the day.
Yeah. So I'm gonna choose to take this one on a kind of a deep level. While there are more sort of tactical responses I could give, of like, boundaries, self-other differentiation, attend to your attachment patterns. If you have anxious attachment, that's going to play up into that. There's that whole level of things. But in the grand scheme of things, the more that we as people and secondarily as beings and as facilitators of any kind can remember and find that place of trust in the greater flow of life, in the greater flow of the universe, in the inherent goodness of the unfolding, and the trust in the mystery of that forms this wonderful counterbalance to how can I help? And what happens if I don't help? And the anxiety that can build up of, but I'm not finished helping. And what if I haven't helped enough? Like, well, then you always have, because that's natural and normal. But then to the degree that I keep remembering that it's all good and it's all going to keep unfolding, inshallah, right? Like it allows me to punch out at the end of the day, at the end of each interaction, and go, and I do what I can. And at the same time, it's already all good. And this is just part of it. And it's going to happen in its own sweet fucking time.
I find as a facilitator, sometimes I get in trouble if I don't have full commitment or full trust. Now, neither of those things is entirely 100% possible. But there's a certain time when I need more commitment. Like today, I'm a bit tired.
From yourself or from the other?
For myself. like today I'm a bit tired on the podcast. I'm not quite as committed as I need to. I need to sort of keep re-engaging, just so I didn't get good night's sleep last night. And other times it's like, I'm fully engaged, but there's a little bit too attachment. There isn't letting go. There isn't sort of trust of, I do my best, but whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. I'll just one last thing on that point is I came into that one a little bit later in my journey as a facilitator, Mark, and I found it very challenging to my ego to step into that. Very, very humbling in the most profound of ways, perhaps, to step into something that is so core to my identity. Like, I can help people, right? And I'm developing this Uzazu technique that is going to really help people, and all my wrapped upness in that. To be able to let that go and go, and life is really the thing that is, the volutions of beingness itself in its many myriad forms and infinite mystery. That's really what's doing it all. So let's not get all up in ourselves about our role here.
That's nice. That's nice. I think it's definitely stages of this as one's professional competence grows. I perfectly find my confidence and humility are kind of almost not related to my actual skill at all. There's just kind of the two things.
That's a funny thing.
One gets ahead of the other at different times. I look back and I think, why on earth didn't I have humility there? Why on earth did I have, not enough confidence? That makes no sense. And another model I find quite useful is like, do I want to be completely open or cleanly boundaried with participants? Very much just a clean boundary. No, I have my lunch. This is what I'm doing right now. And energetically the same thing. All that sort of openness where it all just passes through, and then nothing gets snagged in the middle, as it were. And
right.
And I get in trouble when I'm sort of halfway between one and the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like resisting, but sort of open.
Yeah. And there's a whole developmental art to that too, isn't there? The more transpersonally grounded my self-identity is, the less I feel I have to even choose between openness and boundariness. Like, it sort of redefines that whole polarity dance. And maybe that was a bit abstract.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the time. meet a friend here in Berlin. So in terms of people wanting to find out more about you, they can go to your website. Is it uzazu.com? Remind me.
.org. uzazu.org.
And also, Dylan, the 3rd to the 5th of September will be in Brighton. Beautiful venue that we used last time as well. Really, really nice space.
That was one of the nicest venues.
It's one of the really top end, isn't it? And we've used it most of the time now. And Dylan will be there 3 days. We decided 2 days wasn't quite enough last time. 3 days gives us a nice sort of in and out. And, if you are from abroad and you're ever looking at any of our courses, they're on embodiedfacilitator.com. But if you're from abroad, a couple of things to realize. One is Brighton's really nice. People like visiting. It will still be warm, very likely, at that time of year. It's a little bit warmer than, say, Scotland. The other thing is, we're 30 minutes by direct train from Gatwick Airport. So if you're in, say, the Netherlands, you can get to Dylan's workshop fairly cheaply. It's a fairly cheap EasyJet flight, for example, from Gatwick. And Londoners, be aware that there is life outside of the M25. Should you want to come down from London, again, it's 50 minutes by train from London, Victoria. It's really quick from London. So if you're coming from London or abroad, then just be aware that Brighton's a cool place and a nice place to visit. And often people add a day or two at the end and enjoy a weekend, for example. And all those details on the embodiedfacilitator.com under events.
I will just add that for those that were aware of or attended the workshop I gave last year in Brighton, Mark, that I'm choosing to focus these 3 days really explicitly for coaches and people that work one-on-one with people. You can apply these if you work with groups. You can certainly take the principles and the practices that I'm teaching and apply them with groups. But I'm focusing on the one-on-one context. Whether you're a therapist or a counselor or any helping professional. It's more so than teaching Uzazu. Well, I will be teaching Uzazu. I'm really going to be teaching a sort of core skill set of things you can do with clients. So it'll be very, very
great. And we found that 2 days wasn't quite enough for that, wasn't it? Because people take a day and a half just to kind of get it. So now another day and a half to actually apply it practically to others. And, your work's so rich. There's so much there that, for me, it's like, I'm there as a participant, as a learner. And, I'd say anyone in this embodiment field could learn a lot from Dylan. So you're super welcome in Brighton, or check out Dylan's stuff online. So Dylan, I need to go now, but thank you so much for joining us again today.
Pleasure talking with you again, Mark, and I look forward to seeing you in September.
Cheers, mate.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/embodiment podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodiedfacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If you're, most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodiedfacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodiedfacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you. Until next time, welcome home to the body.